What is a knot? I'm your guide, Dr. Daniel Lopez. Now we're going to start getting into some of the heavier stuff, and you may need to watch this video more than once if it is too heavy. I will do my best to explain what a knot is based on my observations. This is a theory that I have come up with based on trial and error. Because I am able to identify knots on patients, it's then also possible to identify when the knot has resolved. In the right situations, this happens instantly. For example, a few years ago I made a simple video, and the video was for releasing a joint I believe is a cause for knots in the trapezius muscle. For the people who this was right for, here's some of the comments that they left. "Holy cow, I'm amazed at the instantaneous relief in my trap. Thank you." Or, "I'm extremely impressed. Thank you so much. This post has literally saved me from going to bed in tears like I usually do with this pain." And one of my favorites, "I do notice an immediate difference, and not in that placebo kinda sort of feel something way. I really do feel the trigger points ease up and shoulders moving more freely. Awesome. Being I took 900 hours at massage school, I cannot believe they didn't show us this." Obviously, not everyone had this kind of relief because the maneuver shown only works if it is getting to the cause of the knot. We'll describe other causes in later segments so you can see how complex it can actually be. We need to have a clear model to work with in order to have a chance at making the knots go away. As far as I know, none of this has been researched, so I will describe the model we will work with and move through it in parts. Here is how we will look at a knot. First, a knot is an involuntary contracted portion of a muscle. Simple as that. It is an involuntary, reflexive contraction in a part of a muscle. The point where the contraction is the strongest is often the focal point where people usually experience the painful knot. Something I want to point out that is important is that the contraction goes along the whole length of the muscle belly usually. In actuality, if a particular muscle has a knot, it is most likely the rest of the muscles in the immediate area of the particular muscle will also be contracted. That all I'm trying to say there is the muscles in that area are also going to be contracted. Muscles do not involuntarily contract in isolation. What this means is that the area around the perceived knot is also tense and contracted. These areas are much more tender to touch than people often realize. The reason I point this out is because the author of an article I read suggested knots did not exist because muscle knots felt like the areas around them. The reason for that is because the whole area is often contracted with the focus being at the knot where people feel it. An involuntary contraction of a muscle, a knot, does not always produce active pain. I would actually argue that the vast majority of knotted muscles in the body are not actually felt. Okay, so a knot is an involuntary contracted muscle. Contracting a muscle voluntarily does not cause that kind of pain. So why does an involuntary contracted muscle hurt then? Well, we'll answer the question as we go along. First, let me emphasize that not all knots are painful, at least not without some kind of pressure stimulation. The muscles that are contracted involuntarily also have a nervous system component to them. Because there's a problem, the nerves have a lower threshold to fire if they're stimulated. The knot and the area associated with it are tender to touch and pressure stimulation. This can be the muscle anywhere along its belly, tendons, and even the bones they attach into. So essentially there are nerves that are reflexively telling the muscle or part of the muscle to contract, and the nerves are also making the area hypersensitive. And none of this occurs by chance, meaning that the nervous system knows what it's doing. This is not, quote, abnormal firing, unquote, of nerves like some may say. This is the body responding to abnormal functioning or dysfunction of the anatomy that is associated with the muscle. So the muscles are involuntarily contracted and the nerves are making the area hypersensitive. So the next question is, why is the body doing this? And then the answer is that this is a protective adaptation to a problem in the body. Let me explain to clarify this. Let's take the acromioclavicular joint as an example. It is also called the AC joint, and the AC joint is a shoulder joint between the outer end of the collarbone and a portion of the shoulder blade called the acromion. One of the muscles commonly involved with moving this joint is the trapezius muscle. The trapezius is commonly blamed for a lot of neck pain. The trapezius muscle attaches to both the collarbone and the shoulder blade. Therefore, if a problem arises at the AC joint, where its motion is restricted, even if the overall range of motion of the shoulder appears normal, then the trapezius will contract, limiting or being limited by the restricted motion at the joint. The nervous system, in turn, will make the area, especially the knot at the trapezius muscle, to feel more painful. But this isn't just limited to muscles. A diseased organ will have similar results because it's not just about problems in joints. Muscles overlying the diseased organs will be contracted. Even the area of the spine, where the nerves going to that particular organ, will also become contracted and possibly tender. And I'm talking about the muscles in the spine and that area of the tissue. So let's say someone has appendicitis or a kidney stone. The area around the inflamed structure contract and then they become really sensitive. And the more diseased the organ, the more painful and contracted the muscles around it get. For the trapezius, a tear or dislocation in the shoulder then can cause it to tighten as a protective mechanism to the damage. So the final piece of the puzzle is that a knot is a partial involuntary muscle contraction along with nervous system hypersensitivity that is a response to a problem. Now, this description is still an oversimplification, but in general it works. In general, there are many muscles associated with any given joint that become knotted. Therefore, an AC joint problem may cause the trapezius to become knotted, but so will the other muscles associated with the AC joint. A person may only feel pain in one of the muscles, but many other muscles are often also partially contracted and hypersensitive when stimulated with pressure. This means there are far more knots throughout the body than people feel.
Okay, I hope that has helped answer the question of what is a knot. Next, let's look at why pummeling, knots, or exercising, stretching, and a lot of other things that people commonly do really don't work as well as we may think they do.